Hello, and welcome back to our sixth installment in a series of videos on the history of Japanese prints and the collection of Japanese works on paper at the Honolulu Museum of Art. I'm Stephen Salel, the curator of Japanese art. In our previous video, we discussed the woodblock printed books of Nishikawa Sukenobu. And today, we'll look at how Sukenobu's work fits into the stylistic evolution of Japanese woodblock printmaking. Since the late 19th century, all of the prints that we have considered up until now were once categorized as primitive ukiyo-e. This term, which originated in French art historical texts, has been criticized for its pejorative tone. And in recent years, an alternative phrase, early ukiyo-e, a translation of shoki ukiyo-e, has gained popularity. Early ukiyo-e refers to those prints produced during the movement's first 100 years, from the time when the term ukiyo was coined around 1661 until the innovation of multi-block printmaking, known in Japanese as nishiki-e, in 1765. The five styles of printmaking that were employed during those 100 years were sumizuri-e, tane, beni-e, urushi-e, and benizuri-e. Sumizuri-e literally means printed ink picture, and although we will discuss it here in the context of 17th and 18th century printmaking, it was actually invented sometime after the year 764, when the earliest known printed material in Japan, the 1 million Darani Tower project, began production. As we learned in our first video, however, that text included no illustrations. And since sumizuri-e specifically refers to the process of reproducing visual art, that technique, therefore, did not emerge until the subsequent years, when figurative imagery such as this was added to those monochromatic publications. As mentioned in our second video, around 1661, the author Asai Ryoi published the novel Tales of Ukiyo, which not only contained sumizuri-e illustrations, but also introduced the term ukiyo, meaning the floating world. In this way, the history of ukiyo-e, pictures of the floating world, officially began. The technique of sumizuri-e is relatively simple. A monochromatic design is transferred onto a single block of wood, and parts of the wood block that are not part of the design are carved away. The finished block is coated with ink, and the design is printed onto a piece of paper. Because the technology was so simple, those who produced sumizuri-e range from anonymous book illustrators to some of the most respected print designers in the history of Japanese art. The addition of color to such monochromatic prints began around 1688, when the technique of tane was innovated. The Japanese term tan refers to the chemical compound lead tetroxide, which can be produced by roasting a quantity of lead in the open air. The intense vermilion color of this substance, which can be ground into a powder, mixed with a binding solution, and applied to prints as a paint, has earned it the common name of red lead. Arguably the most famous work of tane is Tori Kiyomasu I's portrait of actor Ichikawa Danjiro in a kabuki play based on the tales of the Soga brothers. Another by Kiyomasu is this image of the legendary warrior Kintoki wrestling a bear. Here are a few more prints using that technique. The innovation of beni-e around 1716 was the next method of hand coloring monochromatic prints. The word benibana refers to safflower, an herbaceous plant whose flower petals are frequently used for making tea. Beni means carthamin, the orange-red pigment derived from those petals. Not only was carthamin far safer for artists to use than the toxic carcinogen lead tetroxide, it more easily dissolved in water, allowing artists to color their prints with more delicacy and accuracy. In addition, the intensity of the pigment could be adjusted to produce a wider range of hues. Around the same time that the beni-e technique emerged, artists also began to produce ukiyo-e, lacquer pictures. In addition to actual lacquer, which is derived from either the resinous secretion of the lac insect or the sap of the Japanese lacquer tree, another substance used in ukiyo-e was gelatin, the collagen extracted from the hide and bones of animals. To this clear medium, the artist added black ink, a variety of pigments, and even metallic powder. Works of ukiyo-e are known for the vibrancy of their color and the depth of their luster. Around 1744, a simplified version of multi-block printmaking rose to popularity. Since the pigment primarily used in this process was carthamin, connoted by the word beni in the previously discussed term beni-e, this printing process came to be known as beni-zuri-e, literally printed safflower picture. In addition to the pink hue of carthamin, beni-zuri-e involved the application of green, yellow, or both to a sumi-zuri-e print. The consistent texture of these colors indicates that the pigments were indeed printed rather than applied by hand. The intricacy of many beni-zuri-e designs further indicates that the artists used multiple blocks and that they employed some form of registration system to align the paper on those blocks. Despite a common assumption that the registration system for Japanese prints was not devised until 1765, when multi-block full-color printing, nishiki-e, began. David Bell from the University of Otago, New Zealand, provides evidence that the system can be traced back as early as 1744. Let's consider how this beni-zuri-e print was created. An elaboration of our discussion about sumi-zuri-e, in order to better understand the importance of registration. The artist began with an ink sketch such as this. One of his assistants transferred the sketch in reverse onto a block of cherry wood. The upper layer of the block was then cleared away, leaving only the lines and black shapes of the design. The carved block was then coated with ink and printed. For a multicolor print, however, we would need a second block for the pink areas, and a third block for the green sections. We would then coat each of the wood blocks with its respective color, take a blank sheet of paper, lay it on each of the inked wood blocks, and rub the reverse of the paper so that the ink on each block permeated the paper. Without a registration system, the colors would end up misaligned. The registration system for wood blocks involved 2 points on each block. One was the lower right corner, where a small notch was carved. During the printing process, the corner of the paper was inserted into that notch. The other point on the wood block was approximately 2/3 the way down the bottom edge, where another notch was carved. During the printing process, the bottom edge of the paper was aligned with that notch. With these 2 points carved into every wood block, all of the colors would be printed onto the paper and appear precisely where they should. This registration system that made Benizuriye possible was perfected over the following decades and led to the innovation of Nishiki-e in 1765. Our next video will focus upon Suzuki Harunobu, the first known artist to utilize the technique of Nishiki-e.